Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. We got Evan Haffer, Joe Rogan, and then we got a clip from Dana White. That's two clips that I got for you today, folks. And this episode is just about being American and Dana White. And you'll see this at the end. Watch till the end. Dana White has something to say to Americans. It's about being American, the American spirit, and what he wishes the mindset of most Americans would be. And then Joe and Evan are just talking about the necessary things like the military, what it's like in other parts of the world, how great it is to be in America. So you got to just sit back and watch. And let's get into it. Let's do the Joe Rogan clip first. As always, let's go.
I think of all the forces that have led them to this particular ideology in the first place, that we are, as a culture, being manipulated. Mm-hmm. We're being manipulated. And it's moving us further and further away from just sanity, just pure sanity.
It's the foundations of Western logic, right? They're trying to poison the roots of Western logic by completely rewriting what we would call the history of the world and the progression around physics and math. And you name the thing that's under assault. It's under assault today. And I think who benefits from that? You just have to look around and say, who benefits from that? Our foes. That's who benefits from this. Not much has changed. If you think, 2,500 years ago, we'll say Socrates was put to death for corrupting the youth, I think is what it was. And I'm like trying to recall it, but he was out there on the street arguing and debating with people, talking about ideas. And the Athenians were like, we got to get rid of this guy. He's like, he's pressure testing what we're doing. Like, we got to put this dude down. And I think, well, that was 2,500 years ago. So anytime the state deems information as a threat, we should probably be looking at that information and then really trying to have an open discussion about it. That's the beauty of America, freedom of speech.
Yes, it is the beauty of America. But it's also why they're trying to crack down on the internet.
Right.
The internet has been the biggest force in not just relaying this propaganda, but also fighting against propaganda. And letting people realize, hey, these people that are supposed to be your leaders, they're compromised and they're fucking you. And there's some things that they're doing now that they're just doing. And what is the economic consequence of the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent on these wars that we're not interested in?
What are the economic consequences? Where are the actual legal consequences for? Here's an easy one, which is we invaded a country of Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, and they're so-called. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
Not one person went to jail. We spent more time trying to connect this fiction around Russian collusion for 2 years than we did investigating why there was a massive information operation internally to the United States that said there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Not one person went to jail. Not one person stepped in front of Congress and had depositions around why did you say that there was weapons of mass destruction when there wasn't? Not one person. But we spent how many trillions of dollars on this war?
And how many people died?
Yeah.
How many innocent Iraqis died?
Well, these are hundreds of thousands of people. My peer group alone, just thousands of people that are physically and mentally altered forever that spent, you could say, the best years of our life in a war under false pretenses. And now the long-term effects are coming back, and also the government doesn't want to pay for that bill as well. So,
they were trying to deny Gulf War syndrome. Remember that? When they were using depleted uranium rounds? Mm-hmm. So these people were all getting radiation poisoning, and their children were born deformed, and they were having these massive problems, and they were trying to deny it because they didn't want to pay for it.
They don't want to pay for it. They don't want to write the check. They do when it directly benefits what I would say is the military-industrial complex and these wars of occupation. I don't want to make it sound like I'm anti. I think there's a difference between a war of necessity that maintains national sovereignty and a long-term war of choice for occupation. That's a war of choice in occupation is an exercise in transference of wealth from the taxpayer into the military-industrial complex. And that's firsthand experience spending 2003 to 2009 in Iraq. That's a lot of time. 4.5 years on the ground and then another 3 years in Afghanistan. Just seeing the expense from blood and treasure alone over the course of 10 years of deployments and understanding what the difference is between precision tracking and then killing terrorists and what we needed to do in order to stabilize a region, and then long-term massive wars of occupation. There's a very distinct difference.
Yeah, I think that's very important to bring up. And it's also very important to bring up that you have to have military power because other countries have it.
Mm-hmm.
And people who don't think that you should support the military, there's people that think all military is evil. Listen, if we didn't have it, what do you think would happen? What do you think would happen? Like, what do you think the whole world would lay down their arms if we did? Do you think that's what would happen? We have to live in reality. And the reality of this world, and you know it better than anybody, this world is a fucking messy place.
We live in a bubble here, a very protected artificial reality. When you get out into the most dangerous places in the world, that's where you see nature. That's where you see the real rules of life, which is the only rules are those of physics. Bullets travel at X feet per second. You have a collective team trying to organize in a very chaotic environment, trying to survive. But really, you strip every piece of what you know around rules, around what's right and wrong. Your morality is put into question. Your mortality is at stake all the time. And you see the real world. It's eye-opening to the point of you understand how great we have it in the United States and how beautiful this country is. And you also understand how fragile life is and how brutal the world can be and how brutal humanity can be towards each other. It can be gone like that. And I think being exposed to it for that long and then coming home, the things that I've been able to pull away from that are, this place is amazing. It's beautiful. It's something that we should foster and encourage and continue to pass down through generations because we're so fucking fortunate to have hit the birth lottery being born here.
Yeah.
Like, I roll out of bed every day, man. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Like, I'm so happy to be alive. Like, I'm so happy to have all my fingers and toes. And I'm so happy for the experiences of war because it's shown me what it's like to understand my mortality, sometimes second to second, but for sure day to day for years on end, and understand that we're only here for a short amount of time and we got to make it fucking count. And we also have to be very grateful and gracious to what we have here for our freedoms and our country and our countrymen. And the experience of war itself, that chaotic environment that's shown me traffic rules don't apply over there, right? It's like traffic lights and police officers and, the things that we take for granted every day, going to work, making our coffee, doing all the things that we do. You strip all that away into just the law of nature. It is wild. Like it is forever life-changing, but you also understand this is what we're living in. Like this is the actual consequence of what we're living in. We're very protected in the way that we live life right now.
Yeah, I'm real glad you said that. I'm real glad you relayed that message that way. People need to hear it.
Man, yeah, it's so serious. I always think of my dad and the way that he was, a little bit of alcoholic, didn't raise his kids and this and that. And then I think of him when he was my age, even younger, and he was a paratrooper and he was like jumping out of planes and stuff. It's so different than the way we are now, the way we think things just always are. In his time, it was like, yeah, I'm going to jump out of planes, I'm going to serve a country and this and that. And it's like, oh, man. And I couldn't imagine doing that. I could not imagine doing anything close to that. One thing that I want to throw up here, talking about manipulation at the very beginning. And then I came across this article. I didn't show it to you guys while I was flipping through, but they're just talking about manipulation and what is manipulation. They were talking about it from a medical sense, but it really made me think about what Joe was talking about, the way it's happening to people right now. And then it's just some examples, like how do they use manipulation? They use guilt, they use complaining, they use comparing, they use lying, denying, blame, mind games is what stood out to me the most. And if you couldn't look around at the leaders of today, along with the media, and see that they don't use all of these things, when trying to manipulate us via the media, you'd be nuts. And then signs of manipulation. This stood out to me as well. Let me make myself a little smaller here for you guys. Signs of manipulation. People who manipulate people have common traits that they look for, that you can look for. They include, they know your weaknesses and how to exploit them. Right off the bat. Like, come on. Like, think about that. Think about that in the past 6 years. Or 3 or 2 or, yesterday. They use your insecurities against you. They convince you to give something important to you. Give up something important to you to make you more dependent on them. Wow. If they succeed in their manipulation, they will continue to do so until you get out of the situation. Now, for me, when I see that goes right back to what I keep talking about of that self-sufficiency. Like, you got to become self-sufficient, because anything that you're going through where you feel that there is this impending or encroaching, overreaching happening to you constantly, treading on you, your freedoms, this, that, it won't stop until you get yourself out of the situation, And I see, in my mind, when it comes to the people, I see that as becoming self-sufficient. You become self-sufficient, then you can't be manipulated anymore. Because, going back to this one, they can't take something away from you. Because when you're self-sufficient, everything that you have, you don't have to give up anything. You don't have to give up a thing. There's no trading. You don't have to do any of that. Because you got your water in check. You got your food in check. You got your power in check. You have your transportation in check. You got your family. Like, you got everything. So there's nothing that they can make you give up. So you become more dependent on them. But if you look at society right now, it's like we gave up. I'm sure, you may not know your great-great-grandparents, but I'll bet money, anybody who's watching this, your great-great-grandparents knew how to grow food. They knew how to grow something. Maybe they didn't know everything. Maybe they didn't know the seasons and harvest and all, but they knew how to grow something. They had someone in their direct lineage, their direct immediate family that showed them how to grow something. And we gave that up. We gave up knowing how to grow things. We gave up knowing how to hunt. We gave up. People nowadays have given up even opening doors for themselves. My wife tells me all the time, because she's out in the world working. I'm in the house all the time. And I go to like comedy clubs and stuff. But she tells me all the time, she'll see people like press a button on a door. And then it doesn't open and they just stand there. And then they press the button again. And it still doesn't open and they stand there. And then they press it again. It's like, what's going on? We've given up even, on a phone. Think about autocorrect. You've given up even having to spell things correctly. We depend on this system way, way too much. Way too much. So I just wanted to bring that up. I'm going to move on to the Dana White clip, because that's a beautiful, beautiful clip. And let's just get into that. Dana White, ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend. Let's get into it. Let's get rid of this. Let's bring up Dana. Boom. Let's go.
There's a lot of reasons why I think there are. And it's not like during my generation, there weren't a bunch of, there weren't some too, but this generation is next level. But the other thing too, to be fair, I think every generation thinks the next generation is soft. But right now, if you look at all the shit that's going on in the world right now, if we went to war, right, there's no respect for the police anymore. There's no respect for the military. There's no respect for our country, our freedom, our way of life that we have here. You can sit around and you can nitpick and talk about things that are wrong with the United States. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell fucking your generation, my generation, everybody's generation. This is it. If this falls, there's no other fucking place to go. So all these fucking people are like, oh God, if President Trump wins, I'm fucking leaving the country. They all say it.
Yeah.
They all say it.
Yeah, of course.
Nobody fucking does it.
No.
Where are you going to go? Nowhere. All these other fucking places that you think are fucking cool and you think are so fucking great, when the shit hits the fan, you find out who's who and what's what. We saw it during COVID. Places that I thought were fucking awesome. Places that I thought I would love to live. And then we go through COVID. gang, this is it. So all the people that are out there marching and crying and protesting and all this, man, this is the greatest country on earth. And we should be defending it, fighting for our freedom, every one of us. It's no different than the conversation I had with Theo Vaughn the other day when we're talking about stupid like sponsors and all this other stuff. Everybody's afraid to stand up. Everybody's afraid to be pro-American. What other country? And some of these other countries are completely up. But the people who live there are proud of where they come from. They carry their flag. They stand up and they, you talk about, people coming over the border from Mexico for a better life in America, right? Show me a Mexican that doesn't love his country and isn't proud to be a Mexican. Wake up. Wake up. This is the greatest country in America. So anyway, this whole thing started with you saying, so if we go to war right now, are you confident in this generation that we have right now that these guys are going to go out and storm some beach somewhere or whatever? There's a small handful of people, most of them probably down around the Bible Belt and down south, that'll actually stand up and fight for this country right now. It's scary. Habib's crew in Dagestan could probably come in and take over this country right now because this generation is such a bunch of
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah.
When you look at some of these people in
It's
these other
pretty scary to
countries,
think
the shit that's going on in the Middle East, some of these guys from Russia, any of the stans, you got a stan at the end of the name of your country,
funny you say
built
that.
different, born different mentality. We're getting soft.
Yeah.
We're getting weak. Every 10 years, we get softer and weaker.
I've never actually thought about that, but when I used to work in a restaurant, obviously a lot of Mexicans there are so proud of Mexico and they all come from shit, like terrible living, but they always will stand with Mexico.
Fucking so proud.
have
Show
none
me
of
a
that
country where the people aren't proud of who they are and where they come from.
Yeah.
It's so strong that Americans that have that heritage call themselves that, right?
Yeah.
What are you? I'm Italian. Yeah, no, you're not. You're a fucking American. What are you? I'm Irish. No, you're not. You're an American. And nobody hates it more than these people who are really from those countries when Americans say that they're from there. What people need to wake up and realize is that we're all Americans. You're an African American. No, you're not. You're a fucking American. I'm Irish American. No, you're not. You're a fucking. We're all Americans. And we need to stop, fucking look around and realize what we have and how good it is. Ronald Reagan, great quote from Ronald Reagan. We're one generation away from losing our freedom.
Man, Dana White is the man. You have no idea. Whew. You have a little bit of an idea if you watch this channel. I bring him up from time to time, but man, he's so right. And those clips that I was pulling up, those articles, that's just a lot of people. Joe Rogan was talking about it. Being pro-America has become demonized. It's become something that people don't want to be associated with. It's just like, even just to bring up, just a lot of my friends who are young white men, you don't want to be proud of that. You want to be ashamed of what you come from, what your ancestors did or didn't do. And it's a wild thing to see. I've said it before. America is the only country where everybody is taught to be ashamed of where they come from. Because black people, for the most part, they have a long generations. It's like, obviously it goes back to Africa, but from what they can find, because you can't find the African stuff for most people, but what they can find, they're from the beginning of America, they're taught to be ashamed because they were enslaved. Then when it comes to the white people, they have this rich history all the way back to the beginning. They're taught to be ashamed. Then you have anybody else who comes in. They're taught that they're a minority. They're taught that they're oppressed. But they still have their pride of their country. It's such a wild thing to see. Women are taught to be ashamed of their background when it comes to that. Oh, we couldn't vote at one point. It's like, it's the only place where you're taught to be ashamed. It's the only place where if you say America first, it's just like terrible. I've said it before. That doesn't happen in Poland. You say Poland first in Poland and everybody goes, yeah. You say Hungary first in Hungary. You say Russia first in Russia, everybody says, yeah. You say China first, everybody says, obviously, if you're in China. America's the only place where if you say America first, everybody's just like, what are you, some white nationalist? You could be black. What was it? Ben Carson? He got branded the black face of white supremacy. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And then again, when I was going through all these articles, because I try to pull up a bunch nowadays, I came across this one. This gentleman wrote 10 reasons why he's grateful to be American. Number 1, America is more of an idea than a nationality. It is a good idea. It is a proverbial melting pot of all sorts of nationalities. 2, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Even when America doesn't live up to its creed that all men are created equal, we correct those mistakes, or at least try to. And you can't deny that. A lot of people will scoff at that one, but it's like, slaves got freed. You try to make a hashtag, stop Asian hate. You try to stay good by people. Like, you know, it's the attempt. Other places, Middle East, Africa, they're not attempting to coexist. Just so you know. They're not trying to coexist with people of different, sexual preferences, the gender whole thing. That thing's not a thing in a lot of places. Like, you really got to think about that in America. And then when it comes to places like Poland and like a lot of those places are just all white. So it's like, you got to think, if you're one of those left leaning white people and you think that, you come from evil and that white men are evil, you have to think you're in the place where, of all the white people in the world, you are actually the most accepting. Just so you know, like, think about that. With Canada as well, but you're actually the most accepting. You coexist with the most different people. Just so you know. Number 4, in America, we are all free to worship according to the dictates of our conscience, or not to worship at all. Religious freedom, though, at risk in our own day, is in part the very foundation of the nation. Although religious freedom is at risk today in America, it still exists for the most part. 6, we have no fear of things like a knock at our door, of secret police. While I read some of these, you can think about, these are good reasons to be grateful to be American, or to even just live in a democracy, period, to live in a free country. And think about, I'm sure you can think of examples of how that's fading. Like this right here makes me think of Douglas Mackey, who's recently sentenced to 7 years in prison because he reposted a meme looking to see if we have Bibles in our homes, Bibles that we plan to give away. We have the right to provide a quality education for our children. I'm homeschooling, but but it's true. It is true. We can make our lives what we wish. We have the freedom to pursue our God-given dreams. Often we can find the means to fulfill them. I know I have. I know I am. We have the freedom to choose the congressmen and senators we wish to represent us in this republic. If we don't like the current crop, we can vote new ones in. I see some people protesting Trump with signs saying he's not my president. Ironically, some of those protesters didn't even vote. Very true. Very true. We have the freedom to disagree with our government and voice our disagreement. We have the freedom to work and pray for positive change. Just wanted to throw that in at the end, along with the clips from those great men, Joe Rogan, Evan Haffer, the amazing Dana White, and again, wherever you're from. But a lot of countries already have this intact, this pride thing. But wherever you're from, be proud of where you're from. And, should be like these articles that I'm seeing of percentages of people not being proud to be American. If you're one of those people, fix it, man. Be very proud. Be very, very proud. Anyways, guys, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And other than that, I'm out.